Part 3 of factoring. What I'd like to do first of all, just in continuation of yesterday, is just tell you that when you factor trinomials with a negative constant or last term, you will need to inspect pairs of positive and negative factors of C. So what I mean by that with a negative last term is when they're in the form of x squared, and you might have a plus or a minus bx, and then you have a minus c. What we have to do is sort of inspect those pairs. So as I look at the first example here, I have factored the following trinomial: a squared plus 7a minus 18. I want you to notice this minus here. What we need to do is, as usual, list all the factors of this last term. So what that is 1 and 18. But as we notice, I have a negative there, so I have negative for one of them, and then I also need to make sure I include a negative for the other one. So in other words, I have negative 1 and 18, I also have 1 and negative 18. I need to list both combinations. Also, I would have 2 and 9 if it were positive, but again, I need to have one of them negative. And then I also would have 2 and negative 9. One more, I should have 3 and 6, and also I have a negative here, and then the other combination would then of course be 3 and negative 6. If I tried to divide this negative 18 by 2, I'd of course get 9. If I tried to divide it by 3, I would of course get 6. If I tried to divide it by 1, I would of course get 18. If I tried to divide it by 4, I would get a decimal, and that's not what we want. So this is all the factors. Now, what I then need to do is figure out the sums of all of these different combinations. So, if I take negative 1 and 18 and add them together, I will get 17. If I take 1 and negative 18 and add them together, I'll get negative 17. What I'm looking for is for that to add up to that middle term. So the sum must add up to the middle term, which is positive 7 in this case. So let's just keep going. If I keep going and I do negative 2 and 9, that's going to give me positive 7, and it looks like I'm done. So negative 2 and 9 are the right ones, but that's not good enough. What we have to do is go ahead and list them in binomial factored form, which is x minus 2 times x plus 9. And we'll practice this in class, but as always, remember to distribute. That's the first example. Okay, example 2 of this. Remember that first of all, if you ever have something that looks like x squared minus x minus 20, where x doesn't have a number in front of it, always list a 1. Now, remember, if you ever forget how to do all these steps by listing all the factors, remember that all you're trying to do is figure out what two numbers multiply to give you the last term, and at the same time add to give you the middle term. So, one more time, if we want to factor this, what we want to do is list all the factors of this last term, which is negative 20. So let's list out all the combinations. I have 1 and 20. Remember, one of them has to be negative. I also have 1 and negative 20. I would also have 2 and 10. Remember, one of them has to be negative. In order for that to be a negative 20 up there, I also would have to have the other combination, 2 and negative 10. And then if I take 20 and divide it by 3, I'll get a decimal, so I don't want that. But if I take 20 and divide it by 4, I would then get 5, which would give me factors of 4 and 5. So 4 and 5 are factors. Remember, one has to be negative. I then list the other combination, any combination that I can. So it looks like all the combinations. What I have to do again is test and figure out all of the sums of all these combinations. So if I add up negative 1 and 20, it's going to give me 19. If I take 1 and negative 20, add those together, it's going to give me negative 19. If I take negative 2 and 10, add them together, it's going to give me positive 8. If I take 2 and negative 10, it's going to give me negative 8. If I take negative 4 and 5, that's going to give me positive 1. If I take 4 and negative 5, it will give me negative 1. Remember that this negative 1 is what I'm looking for this sum to add up to. So it looks like 4 and negative 5 is my correct combination. So listing them in factored form, I have x plus 4 times x minus 5. And again, we'll do this more in class, but always remember that I have not the best looking 5s in the world over here, sorry about that, but also that you should distribute this and check it. One more